Part two of chapter 14 is going to look at stability and change in personality, and we will specifically look at a couple of longitudinal studies in this area. In this slide, I'm going to begin at the bottom and just mention this cumulative personality model of personality development. And really all you need to know is what it says here. People get better at interacting in ways that promote stability with their environment as they age. As we get older, we can interact with our environment in better ways, and so we become more stable. Is all this is saying, and so we're more stable in midlife than we were as younger adults. And I certainly believe this. This is true. I feel like my life is so much more stable. We learn how to deal with things as adults, by having experiences, and so less and less experiences and situations become, or seem new or frightening because you've dealt with them before, and so we become more stable and typically more content in our lives. That's all the cumulative model is based on accumulation of experiences and that we stabilize over time. Moving upwards, the Berkeley longitudinal studies. This section, there's a fairly short section I want you to read on your own concerning the Berkeley studies. I'm going to deal with two other sets of studies, beginning with Costa and McCrae's Baltimore study. So this is listed at the top here. This is known for the big 5 factors of personality. So it's a very important study. You've all heard of the big 5 factors at one point or another. This was the model of personality that won out against other competitors. There were models that said there were 3 factors of personality. There was one that said that there were 7 factors. Another one said that there was 11 factors of personality. Anyways, based on extensive research, not only in the U.S. but cross-cultural research in other countries. I mean, this was the model that best explained the data that we really have 5 different factors of personality. This Costa McCrae Baltimore study began back in the 1950s and early 1960s. Was when the first wave of subjects was being tested. The study is still ongoing. It is a longitudinal study that's continuing over time. They've added more subjects to it at periodic intervals. Initially, they studied 1,000 college-educated men and women and aged between 20 and 96 eventually. So they watched adults grow up. Their youngest subjects were 20, and and their oldest ended up being 96. So they watched adults at different time periods of adult life and watched how their personality affected their lives and how their personality changed at times. Anyways, I'm going to go over the 5 factors and make sure you understand what the big 5 factors are. So the first is openness. Being or demonstrating openness means being imaginative or being imaginative, interested in variety, and independent. That demonstrates openness. You would be at the high end of this factor. Being at the low end is being practical, interested in routine, and being conforming. So you can see the way this works here. The terms mentioned on the left place you higher in this personality trait. The ones on the right place you lower. So if you're practical and like routine and you're conforming, it means you're more closed. Or closed, maybe closed-minded is a word that gets used sometimes. If you're more imaginative, interested, and independent, you're more open. Those that are high in openness tend to show superior cognitive functioning, superior achievement, and also higher IQ. And this is true across the lifespan. not just in middle adult years, but throughout the whole lifespan. So people that are more open tend to be, once again, have higher cognitive functioning, achievement, and IQ. Conscientiousness. If you're high in conscientiousness, you're organized, you're careful, and you're disciplined. If you're low, you're disorganized, careless, and impulsive. Individuals that are high in conscientiousness are more likely to live longer. Um, a recent study showed a continuous increase in conscientiousness from early to late adulthood. It went up throughout your adult years. Why do you live longer? It should make sense. If somebody that's conscientious tends to have better habits. They make sure that they brush their teeth every day, and then they were more likely to exercise and eat right, and less likely to smoke and drink to excess. And so you're being conscientious is being aware of how things affect you and your health, and it also maintaining good habits. Okay. Somebody that's okay. Somebody that's extroverted, going on to the next factor, would be sociable, fun-loving, and affectionate. The opposite, of course, is introverted. That'd be being on the low end of the scale, means you're more retiring, somber, and reserved. Um, so this extroversion is all about how outgoing you are. Those that are higher in the extroversion trait tend to be more satisfied in relationships, and they show less negative effect to stressors in life. Okay. And part of that reason, less negative effect to stressors, those that are extroverted tend to have, more pronounced social support, social networks, which can help them when facing stressors. Going on to the last two, agreeableness. Being high in agreeableness means being soft-hearted, trusting, and helpful. On the low end of the scale, you'd be more ruthless, suspicious, and uncooperative. Those who are higher in agreeableness tend to live longer, just like those higher in conscientiousness live longer. Uh, those that are more agreeable are more generous and altruistic, and they tend to have more satisfying romantic relationships. Um, Finally, neuroticism or emotional stability. This is the one where it's negative to be high in this factor. So being more neurotic would be the terms on the right. It would mean that you're more anxious, insecure, self-pitying. If you're low in neuroticism, it means you're more emotionally stable and that you're calm, secure, self-satisfied. Individuals that are high in neuroticism are more likely to die at a younger age. It's been linked, being high in neuroticism has been linked to being more drug dependent and also having a higher coronary heart disease risk. That makes sense. If you're neurotic, you're feeling anxiety and stress much more than others. We know this contributes to coronary heart disease. Okay, those are the big 5 factors of personality, which is these are the 5 personality factors that most experts agree are within human personalities, and that shows, and thus the importance of the Costa-McRae study. Just to go back up here. Okay, one other study I wanted to mention is going back to George Valens. I talked about him in the first video briefly. George Valens conducted a study of 3 major groups. You can see them listed here. Socially advantaged Harvard graduates born around 1920, socially disadvantaged inner city men born around 1930, and also middle SES intellectually gifted women born around 1910. So he was looking at diverse groups, highly educated, Harvard graduates. I mean, versus like inner city disadvantaged men. I mean, like, so very different groups, and to see, what different changes that they go through during their lifespans. This was also a longitudinal study, and so these groups were followed throughout their lives, until they died. Um, One of the things that they did was, they looked at what factors at the age of 50 contributed to uh, what category a person was in at the age of 75 to 80. And the categories that they looked at 75 to 80 were healthy, well. So if a person was doing good in life, they were in that healthy, well category. Sick, sad was a second category. So if your life was kind of negative and you were either sick or you were depressed or something, you'd be in that category. Or the third category was dead, that you had died by the time you were 75, or between 75 to 80. And so then they kind of looked back and said, well, what were the factors in middle adulthood at the age of 50 that led to ending up in one of these categories? And I'm just going to mention a couple of results here. What they found was that the factors most likely to cause you to be dead by 75 to 80 was abusing alcohol at the age of 50 or smoking at the age of 50. So, and obviously we know that these are negative health related behaviors. Then it turned out that they were the best predictors of those in the did category. One other result I want to mention was that the wealth and income of a person at 50 was not linked to whether or not they were in the happy and well category at 75 to 80 years of age. So you were not more likely to be a happy and well 75 to 80-year-old just because you had more money at 50 or more income at 50. Just another result showing that money does not buy happiness. And that ends part 2 of chapter 14.